So we took delivery from Leonardo's factory of Commando Merlin 1 in May this year.
And you're busy doing a pre-deployment training?
Yes, so we have A-Flight 845 Naval Air Squadron as part of the Commando Helicopter Force based here at RNAS Yeovilton. And they've been selected for the Queen Elizabeth deployment called Westland 18, which is part of the workup of the Carrier and the F-35B Lightning aircraft. So they'll be conducting fixed-wing trials. So uniquely, 845 have developed the Commando Merlin to conduct a number of roles. One of the first roles is deployed search and rescue. So the aircraft equipment, it's AFCS, digital AFCS, enables the aircrew to operate the aircraft in all weather and conduct essentially automated hovers. So a transition down to a hover to pick up downed aircrew in the sea, and that will be utilised as part of the assurance during the fixed-wing trials. They've also been working pretty hard at developing the UK's task group joint personnel recovery capability. Obviously we're using some Royal Marines called the Ground Extraction Force. They've come from 4-2 Commando, Lima Company, and we've worked up over the last year an assured validated capability where they will be employed as part of the Carrier task group. And that's, you know, in the future, once it's operational, I would be able to pick up aircrew if they were isolated either in the littoral environment or deeper inland.
And that'll be working off the carriers?
Absolutely. So the construct that we're working under is a term called MITL, Maritime Intra-Theatre Lift, and underneath that umbrella is the Swiss Army knife, which is the Commando Helicopter Force. So all of those roles that I've explained, the DSAR, also helicopter delivery service around the task group, as well as JPR, and then the standard suite of tasking that we do, such as intervention, humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and short-term training teams, engagement, so on and so forth, all fit under that umbrella of MITL whilst we're embarked on the Queen Elizabeth.
And the capability the Commando Merlin brings to CHF?
Yeah, so it's got a lot of bells and whistles. It's absolutely perfect. So from a maritime perspective, it's got its DNA from the Merlin Mark 1 and the Merlin Mark 2, and those are traditionally deep maritime aircraft with ASW and crow's nest capabilities. But part of that is because it's a maritime aircraft, it's wet build, which means that it's protected from the salt-laden environment that it's going to be working in, which over the length of the aircraft's life makes it much cheaper to operate and easier to maintain. As also a maritime aircraft, first in terms of safety, it's got 3 engines. Should you lose one, it's not a big deal. It's also got flotation gear, so should you lose more than the 3 engines and you end up floating in the briny, it has large flotation bags which will actually help the aircraft float and therefore safely egress all the passengers. It's got a beefed up undercarriage so that it can take the pounding on smaller ship flight decks in all sorts of weather, because it's an all-weather maritime aircraft. And it's got lashing points to lash it to the deck in rough weather. It's got a ramp at the back to allow access of vehicles and troops much easier on landing sites and so on. And then I suppose a real key component that it comes with is a folding head and folding tail. So this enables a number of things. One, I can operate and embark far more aircraft than I normally would if you didn't have folding head and tail. As an example, its footprint, I can park 4 Merlin folded in the same surface space as a single Chinook. So that's really efficient for a lot of the ships. So not just the Queen Elizabeth, I can pack more punch into that hull, but any aviation capable ships in the Royal Navy and indeed our NATO partners, I can put far more aircraft in. What that means is I can get a bigger deck tempo or a larger, quicker deck tempo. That means I can build up massive air power and I can do air assaults much more effectively with a larger combat footprint on the objective. So the folding head enables me to start the aircraft up, have others on the spot. Once the aircraft's on the flying spots depart, I can drag the other ones very quickly, spread them, fill them with troops and get after the first wave and then land everybody at the same time onto the objective. So it's absolutely fundamental part of what we do.
And they'll be working alongside the Wildcat from 847 Naval Air Squadron?
Yeah, so they're already flying together, and that's normal business. We have one squadron of Wildcat BRH, again, Marinized aircraft with Royal Navy air crew, air crewmen and so on. And they're very complementary, so we can use the Wildcat for small movements of troops and so on, but its primary role and function is to find the enemy and fix them with indirect fires. And so it sometimes does an escort function with the Merlin on activities such as the joint personnel recovery, but mainly its key role is providing joint fires for 3 Commando Brigade.
Your JPR role, could you tell us some of the future enhancements you'd like on both the Commando Merlin and the Wildcat?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing some experimentation, tactical development, and obviously talking to our customer, the Royal Marines, and as well as the task group itself. So under the Mittel umbrella, the ability of the aircraft to go further, increase its range and endurance for JPR serials, and also the intra-theatre lift. If the aircraft had to go an extended range, say 500 miles, 600 miles, or whatever, then the air-to-air refueling probe is absolutely essential. And also if there's a problem with access, basing, overflight, then adding additional range to get round countries that wouldn't give us access and so on is strategically important as well. So currently I have a number of refuel probes already in the hangar. We have a partial certification, a release to service. We just need to trial that. I've also got air-to-air refueling instructors on the force from our USMC exchange pilots. So we're just about there on that one. So we just need a little bit more development work on that. So that's looking really good for Merlin. And obviously to upgun any aircraft in threat environments. Certainly our Italian comrades have upgunned theirs with miniguns and so on. So we would look at different suites of aircraft in terms of local area defence in threat environments. We also have a remit to support 3 Commando Brigade in the urban environment. So that's sometimes very short range, quick snap engagements with enemy. So we'd look at a number of weapon systems to do that, and potentially changing the defensive aid suites as well. In terms of the Wildcat, its primary role, as I mentioned, is joint fires. So the ability for them to control indirect fires from artillery weapon systems, as well as fixed wing, to drop precision missiles and so on. So they've got laser, they've got an excellent camera, but the range is sometimes limited. So fitting a radar to operate both in the Maritime, because they do conduct maritime roles and tasks as part of the task group and force protection. And the radar would also give them longer legs in terms of seeing, finding, fixing enemy at range without giving the game away. So their standoff and force protection is enhanced, and also the ability to downlink some of that information and data to the units they're supporting, even to a single ground commander, or if they're supporting the SF as well, to build up their situational awareness and their battle presence is absolutely fundamental. So that's key, and obviously precision fires, you can never have enough. So it's a case of sometimes when Apache isn't available, or F-35B or what have you, to have the ability to have our own organic precision fires is absolutely fundamental. And it wasn't a long time ago when we had the Lynx TOW, we had our own precision fires capability. With the advent of Apache, that was meant to replace it, but to have a Marinized aircraft to conduct that role with Navy pilots, understanding the amphibious nature of the battle space, with those relationships with 3 Commando Brigade, then that's really bang for buck, and that will give us strategic agility to do that. So that's what we're looking at. The future's always bright, ambition is there. We just need to secure the momentum behind those particular objectives.
All these systems have been developed or are in development for other projects, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So none of this is really, having to develop from scratch. So we're really looking at the end of the CADMID cycle, fitting it on the aircraft and training some of the crews. So yeah, I see this as a very quick win, but obviously it will come with the pound sign attached to it.
And operating in a contested airspace, you'll definitely need connectivity.
Yeah, I mean the suites of the aircraft as they are great. Merlin had a limited suite of radios. Interestingly, when it was on operations, it had the uplift of various radios, whether it's beyond line of sight, secure, so on and so forth. We're building that back in as part of the Commando Merlin project. Wildcat, again, there are solutions out there that aren't particularly intrusive in the aircraft system, so it won't be as expensive to do that, to have full connectivity, build situational awareness and be able to interoperate not only across all the joint forces that we operate in support of, but also our partner nations as well, which is key in terms of warfighting in the future.